The young couple holding a baby is talking to Sosuke and Ponyo, and then Ponyo introduces herself and she says something like, "I'm Ponyo. I used to be a fish."
And there's like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah, you're like, okay, I guess she's just okay. All right, so welcome to the show. I'm Tony.
And I'm Ryan.
And today's question is, what's the deal with Ponyo? So just we thought we'd try something interesting here in that even though I've seen a fair amount of other Studio Ghibli movies, I have never seen Ponyo. And I've heard a few things about it. And so we thought, let's record this part first. And then we'll go back, we'll watch it. And then we'll record after I've watched it. And we can hopefully say a few interesting things about it. So, Ryan, I guess, what do you want to say?
So yeah, I have seen Ponyo. Unlike the cat girl topic, animated movies from Japan is something I'm a little bit more familiar with. Mm-hmm. So I will be mostly interviewing you about what you think of Ponyo before having viewed it.
Okay. So I guess, well, what I know about it is it involves a fish boy, right? Some kind of, no, I think it was a fish girl.
Yeah,
right?
I believe it is a fish girl, yeah.
Okay, yeah, we just talked about this.
Was that a real mistake? I thought you were...
No, that was an actual mistake because I keep thinking it's a boy. It's
okay,
a girl.
So for the audience, literally... I don't know, 20 minutes before recording started, he was referring to it as a fish boy. And I was like, I'm pretty sure it's a fish girl.
Yeah.
And he kind of didn't believe me. And
well, it's Poñita, right? Poñita. That's what you would call it in Spanish, right? Poñita.
Is that its name in Spanish?
No, I don't think it is.
Oh, okay. Well, because of the name it doesn't have in Spanish, you made a mistake.
No. I just made that up. But Poñita would be the perfect name for a girl, Ponyo.
A girl Ponyo.
Which Ponyo is a girl, so there you go.
And she is a Ponyo.
Yeah, she's a Ponyo. Yeah, so Ponyo is a Ponyo. And it has something to do with being on top of a cliff, right?
Because that's the name.
That's the title.
There's a whole gambit of issues you have to deal with when you're a Ponyo who lives on top of a cliff.
Yeah, the Japanese title, I don't know if this is the official English title, but it's Gake no Ue no Ponyo, which is literally like Ponyo on the cliff.
Yeah.
So Ponyo.
I believe the official English is just Ponyo.
Okay, there you go.
So the cliff was actually removed from the English version.
Oh, censorship. Jeez.
Yeah,
all right,
cliffs
again.
they're just too obscene for Western audiences.
Oh my god, it's like obscene cliffs. Hang on. Cat's meowing.
So is that a cat or a cat girl? Or a cat girl human hybrid?
I plead the fifth. Anyway.
Okay, so
Ponyo, okay.
Okay, please, continue.
Yeah. Ponyo. Cat girl. No, not cat girl. Oh my god.
I don't believe a cat girl appears in Ponyo.
Okay. Fish girl on a cliff. And there's a part where Ponyo gets its name that apparently it just gets its name because it looks like a Ponyo.
Pretty much.
Or it like feels like a Ponyo, but nobody explains what a Ponyo is. And then
I could say why, but I'll leave it for you to watch the movie. I think
okay.
it's a famous scene though, kind of. I've heard people talk about it. Though I do want to say real quick, if the English name had been Fish Girl on a Cliff, there would have been a much better translation.
Fish girl on a cliff. Oh god. And then I also know the song was very popular, especially in Japan. I used to hear that song all the time when that movie was out. Ponyo, Ponyo, Ponyo. And something about like a fish child, something about Sakana no Ko. Yeah. And probably some adventure. Ponyo befriends a human boy, I think.
I believe that is correct.
All right, so I think I summarized it pretty well.
Are you familiar with what Ponyo looks like?
Kind of fishy, right? Doesn't it have like a fish tail or something?
So I think it has a strange body, which I'd like to hear your comments on, but I guess we can do that after seeing the movie.
Yeah, after I'm exposed to Ponyo in all its glory. So, yeah, anything else you want to add, or should we just cut to after having watched this?
So you were in Japan when it was released?
I might have been there when I was studying abroad.
It was
Maybe?
2008, it looks like.
Yeah, so I think I was there. That was probably like towards the end of my time, potentially, when I was in Osaka. Because I do remember hearing that song so much. So it must have either come out when I was there or about to come out, and the song was really popular. Yeah, because if there's anything I know about Ponyo, it's oh my god, that song, that melody. It's catchy.
I was going to ask what your understanding of the reception of the movie was, but I'm thinking my anecdotal experience was maybe wrong. So I'll say this.
Yeah.
I was also in Japan when it came out, and I didn't see it in theaters because every Japanese friend I had told me to skip it.
Yeah, I think it was very popular, and I'm sure a whole lot of people saw it, and I believe it did make quite a bit of money, might have even set a record for that time. But I did hear from people saying like, it's not the best Ghibli movie. Like, you know.
Okay, so I'm not alone because I'm looking at like the Wikipedia for its critical response, which is generally quite positive. But my experience at the time was people saying like it was one of the lesser ones or even one of the worst Ghibli movies. However, I did notice people I met later who were in America when it came out all had a generally very positive reception for it. I've met people who say it's their favorite Ghibli movie of all time from the West. Not so much in Japan, though.
Let's look into that in this magical break that's going to happen. We can try to find out if the Japanese reception was a bit different from the Western reception. That's an interesting thing to look into.
The viewers, only a few seconds. For us, 12 years.
All right. Well, I'm going to go into my cryo sleep pod now after watching the movie, and then we'll come back. It'll be a whole different world, but we'll be talking about this fish girl on a cliff.
Fish girl on a cliff.
So we're back from our cryo sleep. How'd it go, Ryan?
Nice to be up again.
Exactly. Yeah. 12 years. 12 years. The world
we
has
put
changed.
A lot of prep time into this episode for 12 years.
Yeah, we did. And it's going to be an amazing 20 or 30 minutes.
Yeah.
It's commitment.
Yeah, I don't even recognize my family anymore. But
yeah. Well, that's what we do for this show, guys. So, okay. So, I watched Ponyo, and yeah, woo! Finally, it only took me like 9 years, 10. What is 2008 to what is this? 2019? Yeah, 11 years.
Yeah,
it only took me 11 years.
It doesn't feel like it was that long ago, but yeah.
Plus the cryo sleep of 12. So yeah, it's been like 21 years. So
you went into the sleep before the movie came out.
Yeah. Don't think about it too deeply, but. So let's go through Ponyo, just in case anybody's hasn't watched it lately, or in case people just do not care about spoilers and they just want to listen to this and not even bother with the movie. Hey, then go right ahead. So Ponyo is a story about a fish that ends up becoming a girl. And,
that classic story.
Yeah. And
there's a cliff.
There's a cliff. There was a cliff. I was absolutely right about that.
There was indeed a cliff, and they are above it most of the time. And the official English title for a while was apparently Ponyo on the Cliff by the Sea, but lately I think it's just Ponyo. I mean, even in Japanese, no one calls it the full thing. It's just Ponyo.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so fish girl ends up becoming real girl. And there's a bunch of stuff that doesn't make sense, which we're going to discuss. But the movie starts out with Ponyo, who has not received the name Ponyo yet. Her real name is Brunhilde, going off, like running away, right?
Yeah. Yeah, when you say it all out like that, it's a weird story.
Yeah. So Ponyo runs away and ends up getting trapped in a bottle. Right? And then Sosuke, which is the 5-year-old protagonist boy of the movie, lives on this like house on a cliff and then goes to the bottom of the cliff before having to leave to the nursery school for the day, but then he finds the bottle, and Ponyo, this like goldfish with a human face kind of thing is like inside the bottle, right?
And he thinks it's just a normal goldfish, apparently.
Yeah, like nobody question, like only the old lady, the one old lady later in the story at the old folk home, like she says something about, oh, it's a fish with a human face, but nobody says anything about this fish with a human face, right? Aside from her.
Yeah, he's just like, oh, look, a goldfish.
Yeah, he just totally normal goldfish in the ocean with a human face. So, okay.
It also drinks his blood.
Yeah, it licks. So he smashes open the bottle to free the fish because he thinks, maybe it's dead and I want to set it free. And then he cuts his finger and Ponyo, the as of yet unnamed, or Brunhilde, soon to be Ponyo, licks his finger and tastes his blood.
It's kind of the setup to a horror movie.
Yeah. That ends up, spinning out of control. So he takes the fish to school, and Risa, the mom, is like, "Hurry up, Sosuke, we have to go to school. Hurry up!" And she starts, driving recklessly, which becomes a thing in the movie, like later on too. And then Sosuke gives it a ham sandwich, and then Ponyo loves the ham. It starts going crazy for the ham.
It's clearly a carnivore.
Exactly. Yeah. It gets a taste for meat. And then Ponyo gets its name. And this is a part that really, I think, deserves to be discussed.
Okay.
We can jump into this before we continue with the summary. But so the justification for the name that Sosuke gives it, right? So he says to Risa, who is in the driver's seat as they're driving, he's in the passenger seat, he's holding Ponyo in like a bucket kind of thing, right?
Yeah, like a little kid bucket for making sandcastles or something.
Yeah. And then he says, Ponyo, so he tells Risa, he says, Kono ko wa Ponyo te yun da yo. So this, literally, this kid, this thing, this being, this child, I'm going to call it, is named Ponyo.
Mm.
And then he says, Ponyo te shiteru shi, mahou ga tsukaeru mon. Okay. So I want to deconstruct this linguistically. So the idea is that Ponyo is like an onomatopoeia, kind of like it's the sound for something kind of soft and round and squishy, right?
Which she is.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can accept that premise, and I can accept the logic behind the characters, deciding to name it that, and Miyazaki's logic. That all okay. That checks out for me. But Ponyo te shiteru shi. So shiteru is like it's Ponyo. It's in the state of being Ponyo, soft and squishy. But then
it's Ponyoing.
Yeah, it's Ponyoing, right? And then she is kind of like, but there's also other reasons.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Okay, what are those reasons? And then the next thing he says is mahou ga tsukaeru mon, right? So magic.
It can use magic.
It can use magic. And then mon is like this general truth, like obviously, this is apparent to you that it can use magic and it's in the state of being Ponyo. Therefore, I must name it Ponyo, right? Like,
didn't you know soft round things can always use magic?
Look at Totoro. So obviously this is a 5-year-old and I guess in the logic of the world, there doesn't have to be a one-to-one logic connection there, but to
be honest, I feel like this is exactly how a 5-year-old would talk.
Yeah. I can accept that, but it's just very funny to me, like analyzing it like just linguistically. And in the English dub,
I didn't see that. What does he say there?
It doesn't give a reason. Like, it doesn't make any sort of explanation that Ponyo is like an onomatopoeia, that it's this soft, round sort of sounding word. It just says like, I forget the exact words, but something like, its name is Ponyo. It can use magic. So something along those lines. It completely ignores that. It doesn't give any sort of explanation to that. And I guess it's kind of tough, right? Because there's not much lip space.
Made a sound of disappointment for that translation, but honestly, I don't know how you would translate this into English.
Absolutely, yeah. Like there's a lot of words that you'd have to like try to cram in there, and it doesn't seem like you could. But maybe in the subtitles. I didn't check the subtitles. All right, so Sosuke and Ponyo arrive at the school. And then he says hello to these old ladies, and he shows them the fish, and they're all like, "Oh wow, it's a fish!" And they're all like happy to get to talk to this little kid. And then there's this one older lady that she's like, "Oh no, put it back! It's a fish with a human face. It's gonna cause a tsunami, right?" And okay, so right, and it kind of ends up turning out that way.
It's kind of funny you mentioned it. I had forgot about the tsunami warning.
Yeah.
So, like, the one person who does recognize it not being a normal goldfish still seems to know about it and that it causes tsunamis.
Yeah. She's a smart lady, I guess. I don't know. Far smarter than everybody else, even though she's kind of cranky.
Yeah.
And then there's that whole thing with there's his classmate Kumiko-chan, and Ponyo ends up like spitting water in her face, and and then he has to run away and hide her, and
anyway, in the bushes.
Yeah. So anyway, the story progresses, and Sosuke is all crazy about Ponyo. He after that is that Ponyo disappears, right? Ponyo goes back. Fujimoto takes...
Yes, I think during like the afternoon, the waves come and like wash her back out to sea.
Right. And then Fujimoto takes Ponyo back. Fujimoto is the father, which is this
in the aquarium.
Like strange human character that somehow ends up like living in the world of ocean people, fish, and having a child with this ocean goddess. And there's not much explanation how this happens, so you just accept it.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. And then it tries... Fujimoto's like outraged that Ponyo's been on the surface and that it ate ham, and that it wants to go back, and the end of the world will come if there's this whole like magic going on to the surface world. Anyway, Ponyo decides like, no, I want to be human, and I want more ham, and starts to slowly become a human and escape.
I love how she's not like Ariel from The Little Mermaid, where her whole life has been like fascination with the surface world.
Yeah. She
literally just like accidentally got stuck in a bucket or in a glass bottle.
Yeah.
Drank some blood, had a slice of ham, and was like, nope, this is the life for me now.
That's so true. Yeah. That was, just Ponyo just wants...
Ham is really good.
Yeah. Some ham, a little bit of, fresh air. And
she got to spit water in like 3 different people's faces.
Exactly. Yeah. And this little boy that, is just, never complains about her, is absolutely crazy about her, says he's going to protect her at all costs. That just, I guess she liked it. So yeah.
So I'm kind of curious what your feeling was when he first found her, because not to get too far ahead of the summary, but it becomes almost a love story near the end. But at this point in the story, I thought he was just like a normal kid who's like, this is just a really cool thing I found, therefore I like it. Like,
yeah. Yeah,
not so much into her as a person, just like, I found a new pet, isn't it neat?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think like kids go through that all the time. You find something and you go like, oh my God, this is so cool. And then you want to show all your friends. And I think it starts out with that vibe. Although in the car, when he's talking to Risa, she says something about like how... isn't the teacher like not going to let you have Ponyo there? And then he says like, oh, mamotte ageru. Like he says, like I'm going to protect you, Ponyo. So like it all kind of starts there. And then Miyazaki, in one interview, he says how he wanted to make a movie where the character, like fulfills his promise of protecting someone, right? There's tons of movies where a character might like promise something like to protect them, to save them, and something happens where they're not able to do that. But he wanted to try making a movie where that goes all the way through the end and actually fulfills the promise. So I guess, that is exactly what happens.
That is a nice sentiment, but isn't that like most Miyazaki movies?
I guess, in a way. I didn't think about that.
Because this is not like one of the early ones or anything.
No, not at all. Yeah, this is like 3rd latest or 4th latest one. So
yeah, this was. I think at the time he announced this would be his last one, but he's done more since then.
Yeah, I think like the past 2 or 3 ones he keeps saying like, "Oh, this is my last one. I'm going to retire," and then he keeps coming back.
Yeah, there's another one coming out next year or something. I think.
Yeah, soon. Yeah. So Ponyo comes back, right? Like runs away from Fujimoto, and then this is when like the big kind of one of the epic scenes happens, right? Like it seems like there's like a tsunami coming and there's this rain and storm, and then Risa is taking Sosuke back home, and there's like these like emergency workers telling her like, no, you can't go on the road, it's too dangerous, and then she just like goes right on through and is driving like completely recklessly again through the road. And then along the way there's this big wave and Ponyo shows up and she's like running on the wave, and
the waves are all like giant fish.
yeah, there's big fish, and the waves too, like apparently Miyazaki based them off of like ukiyo-e, like woodblock prints designs, like especially like Katsushika Hokusai, so, you know, the big wave of Kanazawa, like that's probably like the most famous ukiyo-e print like ever. So they end up meeting with Ponyo. Ponyo catches up, she stops, Risa stops the car, and then Ponyo like ends up like running at Sosuke and like hugging him, right? I think.
I think so.
And then at first Sosuke doesn't realize like who it is because it's this like girl, and then he realizes it's Ponyo, and nobody questions like, wait, so this fish is now a girl? Like, what's going on here? Just nope. Let's just go on, and Risa just says, okay, there's a lot of stuff going on here, but let's just stay calm. Let's just move on. Like,
yeah, I think she proves who she is because she still has the bucket from earlier that she was lost with.
Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah, then they spend the nice evening there and eat some food, and it's all like very heartwarming. And then Risa goes off on her own again and leaves Sosuke and Ponyo all by themselves.
Good mothering.
Yeah. Meanwhile, like you know, there's still like this flood and all this stuff going on, and then she goes off to the old folks' home to see what's going on. Doesn't come back the next morning. And so they go off on like Ponyo uses her magic to turn the little boat like into a actual boat, and they go off and eventually manage to track down Risa and everyone, and it all kind of comes together at the end where Risa and Ponyo and Sosuke meet Ponyo's mom, and she tells him like, oh, can you promise me that you're gonna was it like you're gonna accept Ponyo like whether she's a fish or a human, or like half fish half human? And then he says, yes, I don't care, I like Ponyo. And the movie ends with like Sosuke kisses like a bubble, right? And then Ponyo turns back into a human girl.
Yeah, I think so.
Right, and just suddenly the credits come and you're like, what's gonna happen now, right?
Yeah, she's in a bubble. He kisses it, and then she like remorphs into a human. Right.
Yeah, and so the rest of their lives, like immediately, I started thinking about like, how does this work, right? Because Ponyo doesn't have like any sort of birth certificate, doesn't have like a koseki, right, which is like the family registry.
Yeah. And like the mother just has a new daughter suddenly out of nowhere, basically.
Absolutely, yeah. and so like they're gonna have to somehow justify.
And the father doesn't even know any of this was happening.
Yeah. The father's like coming home on the ship at the end, and he shows up, and he's gonna like see it. Like, wait, who's this girl? Like, what? We have to take care of her now? Like, oh my god!
But like knowing Miyazaki movies, so like, oh, that's fine.
yeah, basically. Yeah, I'm sure. We'll talk about like the potential sequel a little bit later, but. Yeah, like I immediately started thinking about that, and then I guess let's kind of discuss like, what did you think of the movie? Like when the movie was done, like did you enjoy it? What's your take on it?
So I had gone into this being told by many Japanese friends that it was one of the lesser Ghibli movies, so my expectations were not very high, and I guess it was better than my expectations because I enjoyed it, but it is like a that was strange kind of feeling when it was finished. Yeah,
I felt that too. Yeah.
There were things I liked a lot, or things I guess I should say were interesting. It's fairly confusing as to what's going on and like what all the danger to the world is. But I think that's because the movie stays from the point of view of the 5-year-old boy, Sosuke.
Yeah.
And since he doesn't know what's going on, the audience kind of also doesn't know what's going on.
That's true. Yeah, that's interesting to point out. Like, for example, there's a part when Risa and I forgot her name, but Ponyo's mom, like the sea goddess, like they're talking like really far from the camera, I guess you would say, and you can't hear what they're saying, right?
Yeah.
Like Sosuke wouldn't know what they're saying, so it's not important that you know what they're saying either. And
she is Guran Manmare.
There you go. Yeah. It was some confusing kind of name. Yeah. And Miyazaki kind of brings that up in one interview. He says like, Sosuke wouldn't find any of that interesting anyway. Like, so, that's why like it's not really important to hear what they're saying.
Yeah, we're from his point of view, and that's just boring adult talk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's more or less what Miyazaki was trying to say. Yeah, exactly.
If this had been done in America in the 50s, it would have been that Peanuts wah, 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 wah sound.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah, I felt kind of the same. Like I didn't know what to think. I was kind of confused. I didn't really get like the message that the movie was trying to get across.
Yeah.
And I really had to like stop and think and read and like digest it before it kind of started to make sense to me. And I guess that could be a testament of a good movie, or that could be like the opposite.
It's an interesting movie, but I'm the same with not knowing what the message was. At the very beginning, because the Fujimoto is like complaining about humans being corrupt and evil, and Ponyo gets stuck in like a glass bottle, I assumed it was going to be kind of like an environmentalism thing, because Miyazaki does a lot of those.
Yeah, it seemed that way.
But not really.
Yeah, that kind of goes away pretty... I guess you could say the tsunami is like an environmental kind of thing, but...
Yeah. They don't really
obvious.
cause it or anything. I mean, the magic causes it, not like humans with litter or anything.
Yeah. So, like, when I started thinking about the movie, I started trying to figure out, like, what it could be about. And one of the messages that seems to be there maybe has to do with, like, individuality and, like, valuing what's important. So, for example, we can get into this, which is kind of a really... obvious thing to a Japanese speaker watching it in Japanese, but not so much to somebody watching the dub, the yobisute thing, right? So
before we get into it, did you know about that before you saw it?
Did I know that
that the yobisute was like a thing?
I had been told, yeah.
Okay, I hadn't.
Mm-hmm.
First, just to make it clear to the audience, yobisute is a Japanese thing of not using honorific titles, I guess, for people.
Yeah. Exactly.
So essentially, Sosuke does not call his mom and dad, but Lisa and... I forgot the dad's name because he's
Koichi.
barely in the movie.
Yeah.
Koichi.
Yeah. So, yobisute, like, typically, most cases you would add, like, san, like, Ryan-san or something like that, right? Or you would just call somebody by, like, some kind of title, like, for example, sensei. Or in this case, okasan, otosan, right? Like, mother, father. Yeah. But in the movie... Sosuke never calls Risa like mom, never calls Koichi dad. The entire time he's just calling them by their first name. And that's really jarring for anybody that like is watching that in Japanese and understands what's being said. Like
the reason I asked if you were aware of that is I watched it in Japanese the first time and I was not aware of that. So I thought Lisa was like his older sister for a while.
Yeah, it really comes off that way. Like the way they interact with each other, especially like in that first scene in the car, like it really comes off like they could be siblings or something.
Yeah, it wasn't until he's at the old folks' home. I think one of the people there refers to her as his mother, and I was like, "Oh, that's his mom."
Yeah. So,
though speaking of yobisute, I think he does call the old folks san.
Yes, he does. He's like Toki-san and whatever san. Yeah.
So
yes, he
not
does.
Full yobisute, just to his parents.
Yeah, which is really strange. So I obviously wanted to look into this. And as far as I can tell, Miyazaki hasn't made any clear statement on the matter. And I think he rarely makes statements on these kinds of like very concrete things. He likes to keep things open-ended. But the producer, Toshio Suzuki, did make a statement when he was asked about this. Basically... he kind of speculated that Risa had taught Sosuke to call them by their first names to kind of emphasize like a sense of individuality. And then Suzuki also speculated further that perhaps in the near future or in the not too distant future, Japanese families may adopt this practice.
Maybe like in 1,000 years.
Maybe, yeah, 1,000 years. That seems more likely. I don't know about that. Like one thing, yeah. Go ahead.
As someone who lives in Japan, there is, I think, a movement away from traditional okasan no tosan into like mama papa.
Definitely, you hear that a lot. Yeah,
but still not names.
yeah, and interestingly, in the dub, they use mom and dad. Because I guess it would have been really confusing, like it was for us watching it in Japanese.
Yeah, I am disappointed to hear they changed that because it's confusing in the original. I think you can keep that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I mean, like, obviously even if Miyazaki doesn't explain it, there was some kind of intent there. He was trying to do something with that.
And I didn't notice it at first until after reading the articles and kind of thinking back. I do think his relationship with his mom was closer to equal than a normal mother-son relationship.
Yeah,
like, they're not
so.
equal. She's still in charge, but they both talk to each other as if they're equals sometimes.
Yeah. I definitely got that vibe. And it was kind of nice to see, I would admit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like the general feel, like how close they were, it seems.
It would be nice to see 10 years in the future if he's like a very independent person, or if he's just like some rebel who hates his parents or something.
Yeah. That would be very interesting.
Also, what is Ponyo going to call them?
Yeah. Oh my God. Like I said, we'll get into the sequel stuff.
Yeah.
The other thing that really, I think, related to that is there's that scene where Sosuke and Ponyo find Risa's car after the whole tidal wave thing and all that disaster happens. And then Sosuke starts like yelling like, Risa. He starts calling out, his mom's name. But like, if you were to say like, okasan, suddenly like it takes on a very different tone. It's like a little boy like desperate to find his mom. Whereas like, it really feels different when he's like yelling Risa. I can't quite explain like the vibe that I get, but it comes off very different as opposed to like had he been yelling okasan. So I don't know, maybe Miyazaki started with that scene. Who knows where that idea started, but that is a very memorable scene to me because of that distinction.
Well, I mean, whenever you're in danger, you always switch to calling your parents by their first names, just like Superman did.
Exactly, Martha.
That's just a normal human thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's how things go. I will remember that if I'm ever in danger. I should first name.
If you just yell mom, they're like, well, whose mom do you mean?
It could be any mom, right? Anybody with a child is a mom, right? But there's only one Lisa that will respond to your voice, right? So, but going off of that, the other interesting thing, twice in the movie, Sosuke rejects, for example, the first time, I think it was with the old women, they tell him like, oh, come over, we want to talk to you or something like that. And then he says, I'm sorry, I'm busy. And then he goes off with Ponyo, right? That's towards the beginning of the movie. And then later, after the flood comes, and everybody's like waddling around in the water, I think it's Kumiko-chan again, the little girl. She says like, oh, Sosuke, come over, like help us or something. And then he says, sorry, I'm busy. And he like goes off, right? So Sosuke really comes off as like this really, for a 5-year-old, like strong, determined, like kid that's like gonna get whatever he wants to do like done, even if it means like kind of sliding the people around him that he considers not as important in his life at the moment. So I guess that goes back to the whole like individuality thing. Like it kind of jives with that, maybe. It
could be that. I kind of interpret that more as typical 5-year-old behavior where he's just not aware of being rude to people exactly.
True. Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, you try to get a 5-year-old to be like polite, like by societal norms, and good luck with that.
Yeah.
But one interesting thing that I found was, so of course there is an inspiration there. Like Miyazaki has said that, like maybe the idea goes back to when he was like 9 years old and he first read The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen. But what he wanted to do was like set it in modern Japan, and also kind of remove some of those like Christian overtones that are in that original story. So by placing it in modern Japan, then I guess you also start to explore like, parent-child dynamics like in present day. And so maybe that's what he was trying to do with that kind of like portrayal of Sosuke and how he interacts with his parents and all that. Maybe.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned her driving.
Yeah. I mean, she drives twice in the movie, right?
Yeah, and honestly, even though it's animated, it made me nervous both times.
Yeah. Like the first time she's trying to get to work because she works at the old folks home, but she's also right next door to the old folks home is the nursery school that Sosuke attends. And so they're trying to get there really quickly because I guess they're barely going to make it on time. And she's like going really close to like cliffs and stuff. And it's unnerving.
But that's just, modern Japanese woman, I suppose.
I guess, yeah. I mean, briefly we could say, but when I was thinking about why Risa is portrayed and like why her character is the way it is, like the only conclusion that I could come up with was, aside from it just being like an interesting character, is that she had to be this kind of character. Otherwise the story just would not happen, right?
Yeah. So basically she abandoned Sosuke on the night of the tsunami.
Yeah.
So that the entire plot can happen with his adventure with Ponyo.
Yeah.
And if she had been I don't want to say good mother, responsible mother, and
yeah,
stayed with him or brought him with her,
typical
then
mom
none of this would have
expect.
happened. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, the story just would fall apart and nothing would happen. And then I guess you have to like start giving justifications for that kind of behavior early on in the movie, right? So
I don't think he wanted the audience to dislike her, so she's shown as being like brave and concerned about the safety of others, which is her motivation for doing this.
Yeah, because the justification.
But ultimately, she is still abandoning her child.
Yeah. And overall, I did find Risa likable. It's just that some of her decisions are kind of like why did she do that? Like, but.
I mean, to be fair to her, she did tell Sosuke to stay at home and not come down into the tsunami after her.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But he didn't listen, so.
She wouldn't have listened either, so I guess it's like mother, like child.
Yeah, and then there's Koichi, I guess, the dad, which is pretty much absent the entire movie.
Yeah, we don't get much from him.
So
he's the captain of a ship that's stuck at sea because of the tsunami.
Yeah. That ends up
the end. That's all we get.
He's first introduced. He's supposed to come home, but then he ends up getting like a job, and so he has to return back to sea, and then that leads to him getting stranded at sea during the like main part of the plot when Ponyo shows up. And I was trying to figure out like what kind of ship captain or like shipman he is. Because that's never made particularly clear. Like, is he a fisherman? Is he like a cargo? Like,
his ship's fairly large. I just assumed some kind of cargo ship.
Yeah, that is what it is. I found on the Ghibli website he's described as a domestic cargo ship captain or something like that.
But he's delivering to like middle of nowhere town. So
yeah. It seems like he just kind of sticks around that area and makes small shipments. But something interesting. There's a documentary that documents the like recording sessions of each of the voice actors during the movie. And when Miyazaki is talking to the voice actor of Koichi, he explains to him that in reality, Koichi's dream is to be the captain of a much larger ship, but he's kind of stuck at this small ship. So he's he actually wants to do something much larger, but I guess Koichi just likes to be at sea.
It's nice to know there's that much background thinking for a character who has maybe 2 minutes of screen time. Yeah.
No, Miyazaki, he absolutely, he's got every single thing in his mind, it seems, but he doesn't necessarily explain it in the movies, and he lets us speculate about it.
Is that a cat?
Yes, it is. Hang on. I will cut this out. Okay.
No, leave it in. The cat's giving its opinion.
The cat's giving its opinion, yes.
It's like, Ponyo looked tasty.
All right. So, anything else you want to bring up before we start to delve into the whole prospect of a sequel?
Just to like make a question you weren't expecting, what scene would you say like stuck out to you the most when you watched it?
That's a very good question.
I'll try to think of my own answer while you're answering.
Well, I'd have to go back to that Risa scene. That one is pretty memorable, and kind of sad and
Oh,
emotional.
the car turned over one?
Yeah. When he's like, yelling for his mom, but again, calling her by her first name. And also like when Ponyo makes the entrance after her return and, is like running on the waves. Like that's a very just beautiful, epic, scene.
That was very good.
Yeah. I think we should point out that even though we are kind of saying like some of the parts of the story don't make sense and all that, it is still a very fun, enjoyable, and beautiful movie. Like it's really, really impressive.
Yeah. I in some sense, I get the feeling that Miyazaki's primary motivation is to just create beautiful images for the audience to watch. Because there's lots of really breathtaking things like the waves crashing or just the whole storm itself.
Yeah.
I think for him, story is kind of secondary to that.
Yeah.
Which is not a criticism at all.
Yeah. Well, Miyazaki is very much about doing what he wants to do, and he's gonna just do what he likes and what he thinks is. He does consider like commercial success to an extent, but it is very much his vision. One thing that he
made the movie he wanted to watch, and if we want to watch it too, that's fine.
Exactly, yeah, and I think that is extremely commendable because when you start to just do things for the sake of others, oftentimes you get not so interesting stuff.
Yeah.
But one thing that he points out in one of the interviews is that he at that point when he decided to go forward with Ponyo, he realized like he couldn't compete with like CG. So rather than try to like compete with perhaps something like that Pixar would do, he just decided to fully commit to what they could do best and what he thought would convey the story in the best way possible, and that's like full animation. So,
I'm glad they did. I think it looks much better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I don't know how that's gone on in the more recent, like past 3 or 4 Ghibli movies that have come out since that movie. But I don't know.
This is just secondhand rumors, but I think I've heard that they maintain a rule where it has to be 100% hand-drawn.
Oh, okay. Well, that's cool because that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, the other studios don't do that. And it's kind of jarring because it's obvious whenever they have CG trying to look like hand-drawn anime. Mm-hmm. But Ghibli generally does not have that.
Yeah. So what about you? What scenes are memorable?
The one that I think stands out the most is immediately before yours when Sosuke and Ponyo leave to find the mother on their toy boat made into big boat. Mm-hmm. They bump into another family that's on like a rowboat.
Yes, I forgot about that.
And like they're literally at ground zero of a disaster. Yeah. And they talk as if it's just a nice picnic day. It's like, oh, hi, how are you guys doing?
Yeah.
You want some food?
Yeah. and there's this one line that cracked me up where they're talking to the couple, the young couple holding a baby is talking to Sosuke and Ponyo. And then Ponyo introduces herself and she says something like, I'm Ponyo. I used to be a fish.
And there's like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Like, okay, I guess she's just... Okay, just a little curl. And then as they're leaving, Ponyo runs on the water and then like kind of rubs her forehead on the baby to get it to stop crying, right?
Yeah.
And then like runs back across the water and gets back in the ship, and Sosuke just like, navigates the ship away. And like I don't really get the point of that scene. It's funny, it's interesting, but I don't quite get how it builds on the story or adds to it.
I think it's just something he thought would be funny.
Yeah.
Like, here's clearly magical adventure story interacting with normal family.
I guess.
No reaction, just whatever. That's nice.
Yeah.
Kids these days running on water, turning into humans from fish.
And apparently, I didn't go back and double check, but that mother, the young mother, is quickly shown early in the movie when Sosuke arrives at the nursery school. I guess she's in the background or something. So,
okay. Yeah. So she is from the town.
Yeah, basically. She's from the town somewhere, and she had the baby, and it's mentioned like that the baby is sick or something like that. So then that ties into later on when the baby's like crying and all that. So, yeah, definitely a memorable scene, although a little bit confusing. All right. Anything else?
That's all for me for there.
Okay. So let's take a quick break here, and then we'll come back and discuss the sequel.
Okay.
Hey, if you want to keep up to date with everything going on at japankyo.com, Japan Station, Ichimon Japan, then make sure to follow at Japankyo News on Facebook or Twitter. And don't forget to check out the latest episode of my other podcast, Japan Station, episode 32. In that episode, I talked to Susan Span. She is an author, and she is the creator of the Hiro Hattori books. So these books are really, really interesting. They take place in the 1500s, and they follow the adventures of a ninja named Hiro Hattori and a Portuguese priest. And they go around Japan solving murder mysteries. And in the interview, we talk about the Japanese judicial system of the 1500s, jails, climbing 100 mountains in 1 year, and a whole bunch of other really interesting stuff. So go check that out at japanstationpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, so Ponyo, it seems, was at one point possibly going to have a sequel, right? And Miyazaki, it seems that he wanted to make a Ponyo 2 and continue the story, and that would make total sense because as we discussed, the end of the movie just leaves you like wondering like, okay, what did I just watch and what's going to happen next? Because
there are a lot of unanswered questions at the end of that movie.
Yeah, and one of the biggest ones is like I mentioned earlier, like how is this human girl all of a sudden going to like live in this human society, and how is like the world going to accept this girl?
I mean, the way this world's portrayed, they just be like, okay.
Yeah, oh, this girl just, okay, here's your birth certificate, and here's your paperwork, and just go ahead.
Oh, she's a fish child? That happens all the time. Yeah. Here you go. Fill out this paper. Hanko here. Yeah, and like, with a name like Ponyo, right? Like, obviously it seems like a kid would get teased about that. I've heard weirder names.
Oh, God. Ponyo. I mean, come on. I think that is a name that is a good target to tease.
That is a strange name, but like especially in Japan with the younger generation,
absolutely, there's some
names.
Yeah. There's definitely some interesting names. And then we never know the last name. Where nobody ever mentions the last name of Sosuke's family. But for example, it would be like Tanaka Ponyo or something like that. Anyway, so you wonder like how is Ponyo going to adapt to school and all this. So we don't know exactly what Ponyo 2 would have been, but in one interview, Miyazaki speculates, for example, Ponyo befriends Kumiko, the girl that tries to get Sosuke's attention early on in the movie, that she shows up with this like new dress and she's like, isn't it pretty? And she's trying to get Sosuke's attention. So Miyazaki speculates Ponyo befriends Kumiko, they get along, and then Sosuke kind of ends up becoming pushed away, excluded, but rather than that being something sad, Miyazaki looks at that as something happy because Sosuke can kind of be relieved that he's not like the center of Ponyo's universe anymore. And
I'm curious if Kumiko would remember Ponyo as the fish in the bucket that sprayed on her face.
Huh. I mean, it did have a human face, and that seems very memorable.
Yeah, her face doesn't really change. She just gets a body attached to it, really.
Yeah. Huh. I don't know. Like,
I feel like in this world, though, they'd just be like, whatever.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Going by the logic of this world, like, okay, it's just a new girl. She doesn't wear shoes. Okay.
Do you think she'd ever start to wear shoes?
I don't see that happening. I don't know.
Even into adulthood, she's like 45.
Nope. Sorry, I don't wear shoes.
Going into work.
Yep.
She's like an OL.
Yeah. So Sosuke would be relieved in that. And then he also makes a further comment that it wouldn't just be like, a very smooth transition, smooth like life leading up to Ponyo becoming Sosuke's wife and them getting married, because just life isn't that simple. Life has twists and turns. Life isn't as simple as just like, okay, happily ever after, they get married and that's it. It seems like he wants to really give a lot of like adversity and problems and challenges along the way before, for example, they end up getting married. I don't know.
I think that's an interesting point. I kind of wanted to ask you, what was your feeling on the relationship between Ponyo and Sosuke? Because for me, I think they do like/love each other, but I never saw it as anything romantic. I figured in the future they would just have like a brother-sister relationship and that marriage would never happen because that would be weird.
Well, certainly, like when you think about it, they're basically two 5-year-olds that will grow up their entire like formative years together. That is basically like a stepdaughter. Like, your mother remarries very young, and you end up having what essentially is your sister. You grow up, there's no real distinction between a sister and a stepsister at that point.
So realistically, by the time he's 20, since all this happened when he was 5, he may not even remember how he met Ponyo. Because
that's very true.
Yeah, so for him, it might just literally be his sister in the future. Ponyo being magic, and we're not even sure how old she is at the beginning, I feel like she'd probably remember.
Yeah. Huh, that's very true. I mean, I can't remember anything from when I was like 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah, just like vague, like, oh.
Yeah, super vague.
I went to my grandmother's house once kind of things.
Yeah, and you could easily just say like, oh, that was a dream. Like, that was some kind of thing. Like, oh, that's very true. Okay.
See, yeah, that was my interpretation of the relationship. Like, what was yours?
Well, it never comes off as quite romantic, but in the end, it kind of starts to get framed a little bit that way by like
does end with the kiss.
Yeah, by especially like the way the mother, the sea goddess, Grand Mare was her name, I think, right? And Fujimoto, like they're really like handing off their daughter to him and saying like, please take care of her, almost like they're handing off their daughter to be married. I don't think Sosuke like has any idea of the implications of that. Who would at 5 years old? But
off topic, it reminds me a lot of Goku's marriage to Chi-Chi. You're just like, oh, okay, let's get married. What does that mean?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think he says something like, "Is that a food or something?"
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, exactly. That's it. So Sosuke has no idea like what he's getting into.
Such a commitment from 5 years old.
Yeah. And Miyazaki kind of points out how his staff sort of alludes to that. So, yeah. But ultimately, I think it's hard to say that they really had a romantic relationship. It's just like Sosuke trying to be like this impression of what a brave boy should be. But I started to think about what an actual sequel could be, and I ended up coming up with one fairly solid idea, I think, that is kind of fun. And I would love to see this, but of course it's never going to happen because it's just super ridiculous. So essentially, we have Ponyo is just a regular girl, but she still obviously has this connection to the sea. I'm going to just assume that she still is a good swimmer and loves to be in the ocean.
Can she run on the water?
No, because she's not magic. But I'll just say that she's extremely comfortable in the water and loves to spend time in the water and swim. And so as she's growing up, she gets to the point in junior high where they're taking swim lessons, right? Because in Japanese junior high, like everybody has to go to the pool and learn how to swim and all that. And
I don't know. I kind of like the angle where she still can walk on water.
That would be a very different movie. Yeah, that would be an interesting angle too. But now Ponyo, is named Ponyo. She decides to keep her name, and she's kind of teased every once in a while, and then maybe she doesn't have the easiest childhood. But
Can I interject a question?
Yes.
Does she tell people her real name is Brunhilde and she goes by Ponyo, or does she just say my name is Ponyo?
That's a very good question.
I mean, Brunhilde is also a exceptional Japanese name, so
very much so. Yeah, that is that would also get made fun of. I would think. I don't know. That would be something we'd have to decide if we go through with this project, huh?
We'll wait till we get to pre-production then.
Yeah. So anyway, so it gets to junior high and she's kind of been teased, but then she gets in the pool and they all see like, oh my God, she can swim so fast. She can swim so fast. And then she becomes like the popular girl. And it ends up being that she becomes like a champion swimmer. And by the time the 2020 Olympics roll around, she's like 17 years old, right? So if you do the math, 2008, she's 5 years old. And then, that's 11 years. So she's like 16, 17. So she can participate in the Olympics, in the Tokyo Olympics, right? So it's her big thing.
You even got it timed out to match.
Yeah, exactly. I did the math, man. And then she gets the Olympics. Or along the way, she realizes that there's these other like really interesting, amazing swimmers that are also, she ends up finding out, like daughters of her mother. See, here's the twist, because in one of the documentaries where he's talking to the voice actress of the Ponyo's mom, Miyazaki makes a joke that the mom has like other husbands in other seas. In the 7 seas, she has like one husband in each of the seas. So she has like 6 other daughters, right? And they're all from different countries. And they all end up competing in the Olympics together. And it becomes like this amazing like sports anime, like inner monologues. And they're all trying to like, make it to the top and get the gold medal. And Ponyo becomes the hero. So there you go. So Miyazaki, you can have that idea.
That's an interesting idea. Before we go to your second idea, can we talk about this idea a little?
Please go ahead.
My first thought I had is, today I think that would not happen just because how Ghibli is now. However, if Miyazaki was still like 30, 40 years younger, there would be a chance that could become like a manga adaptation series.
True.
Because it did happen with Nausicaa, which I think originally was a manga, but then they made the movie, but then the manga continued for like many years after the anime too.
Something like that, yeah.
Because that sounds like it would be more of like a series thing to me than just like a 1-2 hour thing. But it could be.
You could follow Ponyo go up the ranks as she ends up eventually going to the Olympics. It'd be like a pretty typical sports anime. Yeah.
I would kind of like to see her not be the best swimmer though, like just a normal human beats Princess of the Ocean or something.
Yeah, we could go with that. Yeah. True. Yeah. Or maybe like one of the other daughters is just, briefly away from the ocean for like a few months, like ran away, just like Ponyo did. She licked some other kids like bloody
They
finger.
all lick blood.
Yeah. It all starts with blood. And,
she didn't have ham. She had ground beef.
Yeah. Oh, ground beef. And then if you want to really raise the stakes, the world is going to end. So like somehow that ties into like Ponyo having to beat the other one in order to make her go back because she doesn't want to give away her magical powers.
Is the moon crashing into the earth again?
Little by little, yeah. By the time you get to like the finals of the Olympics, it's things are starting to get really funky.
And the best scene is... Oh, sorry. Go finish your tide thing. Sorry.
No. Like the tides are gonna be like going all wonky and stuff, but so it's getting really, really like the stakes are going higher and higher.
My idea for like the best scene is when they're having their final competition. Like the camera pans up to show the audience, and Sosuke's there, and all the other Sosukes who were like taking care and promising to protect their versions of Ponyo are also there. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
Sosuke and Daisuke and Shinsuke.
Well, they'd all be from like different parts of the world, so
they are. They just have those names.
Oh, they just all have that name. Yeah, they're all like half Japanese kids for some reason.
So the one from Mexico is Josesuke.
Yeah. Just like in the Spanish dub, Ponyo is Ponita, right? Ponita.
Yeah, hers is just Ponita. They just go with whatever the dub's name was.
Yeah. So that's a fun, happy thing, and and just like you could have some social commentary too, just like how Osaka Naomi, like the tennis player,
she could be there.
Yeah. Well, you know how like people didn't start going crazy about her until like she became like the champion or whatever whatever the tennis champion is, and then everybody started saying like, oh, she's Japanese and this and that.
Yeah.
And so it's this like strange situation where people that are like half Japanese find themselves being like not truly Japanese until the Japanese want to claim them as Japanese because they want the credit for them being Japanese somehow.
Yeah, the family. Yeah, there's a. I don't know how much you want to go into that, but they were not treated well before that happened. Yeah. But I mean, like that. I think the grandfather disowned her. For being.
Yeah. I've heard something about that. Yeah. But I mean, there's like you could definitely like put in some of that social commentary into that whole like Ponyo dynamic. Like, oh, everybody used to tease me when they thought I was just some weird girl, but now that I'm winning, like, oh, they all think I'm like amazing, and they don't question me.
It would be interesting to see that. I don't think Miyazaki would ever go that direction.
Nor do I, no.
His movies are designed to make you feel good.
Exactly, yeah. So it could be a fun, happy movie, I think, or like you said, a manga. Then like, you could also just go really deep into that whole like Ponyo being teased and feelings of alienation, and then Sosuke being like completely overwhelmed by being like the sole person in Ponyo's life that she can be like completely honest with and like dependent on, and then like the father just never really comprehending like what the heck happened like while I was gone.
Yeah, maybe he comes back and he's very unhappy to have a new daughter suddenly.
Yeah, because like as we mentioned, like he just wants to be the captain of a big ship. Like he just enjoys being like out on the ocean, and yes, he appreciates his son like saying like, "Oh, I love you" and all that when they were like signaling each other with the lights.
Really, yeah.
But he really just likes being out in the ocean. So I don't know. Like there's definitely a lot of like dark things that you could explore in that, but I don't know. That doesn't seem like the typical kind of Ghibli thing.
Yeah, but so my original idea with this question was there would be an idea if Miyazaki and Ghibli made the movie, and then like how it would be if a different director made the movie. Mm-hmm. And I think if it was not Ghibli, it would go more of your second idea down the bullying and not so happy and just dealing with how life would be. Which, I mean, now that I heard your Olympic swimming one, I think both would be interesting. Originally, I kind of wanted to hear the non-Ghibli one.
Yeah.
But anyway. If I can bring up my third idea I had, which I think is a more interesting one.
Yeah.
We've been talking about Ponyo this whole time mostly as if she's the only one, but she actually has, I don't know, roughly 10,000 sisters.
True, yeah.
So in a sequel, it could be they're curious about her life and they start coming up onto the land to see like what's going on. Yeah. The whole city's like overrun by little other Ponyos.
Yeah. Huh.
I mean, they are her family. Most likely they would want to visit her and see what's going on.
Yeah.
And just because the sheer numbers of them, some of them would probably want to stay up there too.
Yeah. It'd be like that Simpsons episode where the dolphins try to take over the world.
Exactly like that. And it ends with the extinction of the human race.
Yeah.
Except for Sosuke. They keep him. They all love him.
Yeah, it all started with Sosuke. They like him and he's nice.
All of them like him equally. None of them care for anyone else.
Yep. Yeah, Sosuke daisuki. All right. Anything else you want to bring up?
Not really.
Okay, I think we pretty much deconstructed Ponyo as far as it'll go.
Yeah. Even though, I guess my final thing would be, I'd like to say I do recommend watching the movie.
Yeah.
I do agree that it's one of the lesser Ghibli movies, but it's still an enjoyable watch. It's still a very interesting movie, and the visuals are very, very good. Yeah.
I think overall, in that thing we recorded in the first part of the show, we were wondering about the reception in Japan, and from what I was able to tell, yes, it is not considered one of the top Ghibli movies. For example, in a list of the top 10 Ghibli movies, it was number 10.
Okay, it did make the 10 though.
Yeah, it did make the top 10. So, that was just one website's ranking. And then in another site that I found where people would review it, Japanese people would review it, there were 250 reviews and it got an average of 6 out of 10.
Okay.
And, some people say, I was disappointed. One person said like, the design of Ponyo was kind of creepy.
I think that's intentional because it's supposed to be if Sosuke will accept her or not. And if she looked cute all the time, there'd be no conflict.
That makes total sense, yeah. Absolutely, I agree. Yeah. So generally speaking, yes, it's not Totoro or whatever, but
yeah,
I do think it's still an enjoyable movie. And for better or worse, some of the stuff that we've brought up like make the movie really memorable. And I think ultimately got me thinking about why some of these choices were made. And it is a fun, enjoyable movie to watch. And perhaps had we watched it younger, it may end up being one of our favorite Ghibli movies, but we are looking at this from the perspective of adults. So
yeah, I think when it came out, I was like 24-ish, and when I didn't see it then either. When I saw it, I was in my 30s. Yeah.
I just saw it, so same here. Definitely worth checking out. Absolutely. I mean, the Ghibli bar is a high bar. So
I was going to mention that too. I think if this was by a different studio, people's opinion would be higher.
Possibly,
but because it's from Ghibli and it was one of the later Ghibli ones.
Yeah, you can't help but compare it to other Miyazaki
it doesn't
films.
compare to like the 90s and 80s ones.
Yeah. So, it's almost an unfair comparison, but nevertheless, a fun movie. So, if you can't think of anything else, we'll wrap it up there.
That's all I got.
All right. So if you guys are still here listening, then I have you can send an email to ichimon@japankyo.com if you have any questions. If you have any questions that you'd like us to try to tackle, we're happy to.
I'd love to answer their questions.
Yeah. I'm really curious to see what the listeners are wondering because you never know. And we're happy to do the research and look into things in Japanese when that's something relevant. So ichimon@japankyo.com. So anyway, thanks for listening and see you next time. See you, Ryan.
See you next time.